Casey from Oakland, California says, I've heard that some credits from for-profit schools are not transferable to other schools. Is this true? It doesn't seem fair that for-profit colleges charge students for courses and credits that aren't real. Someone like to address her?
Yeah, that's my business. Transfer of credit is a very thorny and complicated problem. And it turns out that part of the pitch that many for-profits make to low-income students, again, people are not stupid. I mean, the low-income student knows that community colleges exist. It's just that we have set up in traditional higher ed practices that are not necessarily convenient, as was pointed out, to the lifestyle and circumstances of particular subpopulations in our society. So they understand that they're paying maybe way too much, but one of the sort of twists on that is, look, you can either hang around for another 6 months for the next term to begin at the traditional college, or I have a class forming the day after tomorrow. Now, it's going to cost you more, but you know, you'll get to where you're going much more quickly this way. And oh, by the way, you can do 2 years here and transfer to the local public institution and get their credential. Now, that begins to sort of make some sense. Like every scam, there is an element of credible truth to it. I mean, it just comports with what these students have been told. So yeah, I can understand paying more for convenience. That's not a counterintuitive suggestion. But one problem, we get transcripts from for-profits at traditional institutions that would be virtually indistinct from transcripts from the institution of your choice, any Ivy League institution, any public institution, any community college. Beautifully formatted. Courses are very recognizable to us. We do a due diligence in terms of transfer of credit runs on the basis of the holy trinity of quality, comparability, and applicability. You want the course to be of high quality. If somebody comes in and says, I've taken calculus, remember, our job ethically is to put the student in a class that he or she has the prerequisites for so they can succeed. If you want to take differential equations, you have to have had 3 semesters of calculus. You really can't cut it in differential equations unless you've had the 3 semesters of calculus. So we look at the transcript and it says calculus 3. And if you are really diligent, you do more than that. You actually go and look up the course syllabus to make sure that it sort of comports with what you know as a credit evaluator to consist of the materials that Calculus 3 should cover. And you know what? The syllabi look good. There's only one little disconnect, and that is not reflective of what happened in the classroom. So we see transcripts that have database algorithms, and then when we do investigation, it turns out to be learning Microsoft Access, which is a useful skill. It is not database algorithms. We see courses transcribed as operating systems, which is a very robust theoretical course, and it turns out to be introduction to Microsoft Windows. Again, useful skill, not really equivalent to what we need to put you in the subsequent course. So yes, there is great uncertainty about transferability of credit, and obviously from an informatics point of view, you ought to be careful. I can make all kinds of representations to you about what she is going to do for you 2 years from now. Now, she doesn't know I exist. She never heard of me. You should be worried about paying me tens of thousands of dollars for a piece of paper that only 2 years hence will she pass judgment on. So it is a challenge, and frankly, it's actually worse than people think to just expose the seamy underbelly of higher ed. Even where the credits transfer, they may not expedite time to degree. You know, to reduce controversy and reduce the kind of unpleasantness that is involved in telling somebody you just wasted 2 years of your time and, you know, 30,000 bucks in tuition money. Sometimes institutions sort of grant credit in the sense of accepting the credit, but guess what? It will not, it'll all go towards electives. You still have to do the full sequence of the required courses, because for me to produce my credential, I have to control what goes into it. This is done in good faith. So anytime somebody is asked to do the same work twice, they're being ripped off. But remember, it's not always the second guy ripping them off. It may well be the second guy is trying to help them, and the first person was the party that stole from them. We run into this all the time. Transfer is a huge problem, and in general, it is a big challenge for traditional institutions to deal with the quality of the work that comes in.
Good, thanks.
If I may,
sure.
I'm hoping to expand a little bit more, maybe ask a little bit more about that same question. As far as the transferring of credits, does that have to do with anything like with the companies like growing and maybe they acquired like schools that were going under and maybe they either kept that like what I heard was called accreditation swapping and does that like because of the different accrediting bodies as well like trying to expand on that if you may.
It's not a directly related issue. Accreditation is one leg of a three-part oversight structure that supposedly protects us. So the three legs of the stool are state licensure, federal recognition, and accreditation. And accreditation is theoretically supposed to be the piece of the oversight system that focuses on the substantive issues, what is being taught in the classroom. So Mike, you're right. It is the accreditors. We don't want politicians in the classroom deciding what is biology. We've had politicians who have unconventional views about what is biology. We don't want politicians deciding what is ethics. We've had some pretty unethical politicians who might have unconventional views about that. So we want this to be a faculty-driven, substantive judgment about is this calculus or not, and that is the function of accreditation. The problem, and again, the subprime mortgage crisis provides a perfect analogy. The regulators, if you think of this as a regulatory activity, even though it's technically private, the regulators have been captured by the regulated entities. Just like the ratings agencies, instead of being the cops on the beat, ended up being in the pocket of the folks issuing these instruments for subprime mortgages. Accreditors have been basically overtaken by the very entities that they're supposed to be keeping an eye on, and because accreditation tends to be a one-way switch. If you say yes, there is peace. You avoid unpleasantness, and you can then move on and let the chips fall where they may, whereas if you say no, you get a lawsuit from an entity that may be a $2 billion corporation, and you, the accreditor, are a $2 million a year corporation. You're going to go under if you say no to some people.
We have a section that we're going to come to in a little bit about solutions, and I think accreditation is one of those areas that we might be able to talk a little bit more about in that area. Let me just ask another question from our web audience. This is from Holly in New York. What would you recommend are the most important questions to ask if talking to a recruiter?
I'll take a stab at that. I happen to have a little list here. All right. So, because of the lack of oversight and the information asymmetry and the high risk of some of these for-profit institutions, it is very important that when students are being recruited that they ask the right questions and not be bashful about trying to get some real concrete answers. Questions like, what is your graduation rate? How do the graduation rates of low-income students and students of color compare to your overall graduation rates? How long does it take the typical student to complete the program? What will the school do to help me graduate in a timely fashion? What % of graduates find jobs in their field of study? Where are some of your graduates working now? Can I speak with some alumni about their experiences and their current jobs? If they can't produce a couple of people that you can go talk to about how great they're doing in their new video game industry career, then you probably want to avoid that program. How much do the graduates of this program earn in their first year of employment? How do you estimate these average earnings? And can I see some evidence? Is the school accredited? Is this specific program accredited by an organization that will allow me to sit for the necessary licensure exams? What % of graduates from this program sit and pass the licensure exam in this field of study? And ultimately, you want to know what the cost burden will be. So how much will this program cost in total? What will my total loan burden be when I graduate? What portion of these loans will be private loans as opposed to federal loans? And what will the interest rate of each loan be? And what is the default rate of students at this school? So make sure you get answers to all of these questions before signing that pack of fine print.
Those are all really great questions. I would also say if you're talking to a recruiter on the phone, the best thing you can say is please put me on your do not call list. Simply don't talk to them. It's not a good deal.
And you should be prepared for pushback. And so when the GAO went undercover, they did their sting operation of for-profit colleges. A lot of times when students kept saying, "Can I speak to a financial aid officer?" the recruiters would say things like, "Well, you know, you're clearly not ready to make the commitment that you should be ready to make at this time." And they have recruiters on tape ripping up applications. And so you get embarrassed or you feel uncomfortable. Another reason why the person kept asking is because he wasn't actually a student. He was undercover. He was really a GAO staffer. And so students should be prepared and not feel embarrassed or ashamed about pushing, even if the response you get is, "These are unimportant questions. Your education is the most important." You have to keep pushing.
And they're very persistent. I actually, before I ever started teaching there, I thought about taking just a single class. And I approached the Art Institute, and I got calls. I got calls for the first few weeks, several times a week. I would get calls. I would get emails. And I told them, look, I've got a terminal degree in my field. I just want the one class. And they continued trying to push me like I want a second BA for reasons I could not understand. As a matter of fact, then I went and taught for the Art Institutes for over 2 years, and then I got fired from the Art Institutes for having written that article that appeared in the New York Times, and then I got still more recruiting materials from the Art Institute.
That's commitment.
Good.
One thing I would stress is if they can't produce, if it's not if it seems more like a moving goalpost than an actual total amount that you're going to be, owe, after you're done with that program, I would strongly, obviously recommend avoiding that. One other thing, the easiest way to tell, what that recruiter's intentions are would probably be to pretend you're not interested and see those particular, how they're going to react to those blockades or those objections.
I think the other thing, we talked about this separately earlier today, is that there's the pressure that's involved in trying to bring someone in. A lot of times it's being framed in terms of getting into college is difficult. There's a belief in the society that college is a competitive process and it's difficult to get accepted. And that generally across the board is not true. In particular for-profit institutions, they tend to admit most of the people that apply. But in fact, that's the case with most institutions of higher education. They admit most of the people that apply. There's only a very few institutions that are truly competitive. And so some of this recruitment plays off of this idea that it's difficult to get into college. Another question that I would suggest asking is, for a student to know, well, what are the other options that have similar programs in my area, right? What are the other schools that I might want to go to, and explore those as well. Don't simply rely on the first one that shows you attention as being the one that you want to go to.
Or shows you the pretty commercials.
Shows you the pretty commercial, sure.